Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. It's Lane here with MetaShackle. Today I'm going to be going over a couple of different charts comparing the DXY, which is the US dollar index, with the current XRP charts. I found some very interesting correlations which could affect how price action moves, especially with some of the things that I'm seeing there. And right now, price has actually been pumping quite a bit, up to about that $2.31 level, kind of right in that range, in anticipation of the Senate voting on Trump's bill, which they call the Big Beautiful Bill, but what I kind of like to call the Big Beautiful Shill, because essentially all it is a bunch of criminals getting together, deciding how they're going to chop up your tax money for the next couple of years to line their own pockets. There was an old comedian that I used to watch when I was a kid growing up in the 80s named Gallagher, and he used to have this joke in which he said, well, if pro is the opposite of con, then Congress is the opposite of progress. And after many years, I think I have come to the conclusion that Gallagher was absolutely correct. So let's not waste any more time and let's get into this video. Use the coupon code 1776 for the entire month of July to get 25% off your first month of my Master Tier memberships on Patreon. I'll see you there. So here on the left, we have the DXY, and over here on the right, we have the current XRP chart, both of which are on the weekly. Now first, we're going to go back to a time right here, which would be Monday, September 30th, 2024. So we have this red line here on both of these charts. Now the line that is red shows a time when there was a divergence between the US dollar and the price of XRP. The green line shows when the dollar and XRP were trading together in the same direction. So the red line is trading opposite of each other, the green line is trading together. This line right here represents the Trump election pump on November 4th. So right before that time, on the 30th of September, you can see that the price of the dollar was moving upwards in this trajectory here. When we look over here at the XRP chart, you can see that same time XRP was moving in the opposite direction. Once we got to the Trump election pump right here, you can see that the divergence ended and they both started trading together. So we had a period of time where price was trading in the same direction. And you can take a look at these charts and see that they were actually trading very similar to each other, even having this little jog right here in the middle before coming to the peak, which we see on the XRP chart. Once we got to this peak, they both had the turnaround at the same point on the chart. The dollar started to go down in value with a big swing right here on the 3rd of March. Now XRP was following suit by trading down, also having this very big move to the downside on the 3rd of March. Once coming down here on April 7th, the price diverged from XRP once again. So you can see that once it got to this red line here, on the 7th of April, that the dollar made another big swing to the downside right here. Now coming over to the XRP chart, you can see that this was the point of reversal for XRP, and it actually traded upwards. So the two were trading against each other, the dollar losing value, XRP gaining value. We then went to another point where they were lining up here on May 12th, where they started to trade down together. So you can see there are certain points on the chart where the dollar and XRP are working together or they're working against each other. And if you go even farther back on the charts, it really goes to show you that XRP is gradually starting to move more and more like a currency rather than a commodity, which would generally go the opposite direction of the dollar. For an example that we see all the time is the price of gold. If the dollar's going up in value, a lot of times we'll see the price of gold go down. If the dollar's losing value, like it has been for the last 6 months or so, you see the price of gold go up considerably. But we are now getting to a point on the charts with the dollar where it is completely diverging away from XRP once again. As you can see by looking at the two charts and comparing them, the dollar has pushed downwards and XRP has pushed upwards into today's rally, coming up here to this upper trend line, just below this buy-side liquidity zone that I talked about a couple of videos ago and have said is going to be very important to keep your eyes on. It's no coincidence that it got rejected right off of this point, and quite a few people in my Patreon today were getting very excited as the market likely had a lot of retail investors chasing this swing up right here on this green candle in anticipation of the vote that's supposed to occur today in the Senate on Trump's big beautiful shill. So we are having this point of divergence right here on the two charts. Now, if we take a look at the dollar chart in itself, right here, you can see that it's trading below the equilibrium zone. The Gaussian channel is turned red. Price is trading below the Gaussian channel as well. If you look at my Fibonacci lines, which are custom set by me for my purposes according to my grafting trading strategy, you can see that previously the price came up into this red zone and just outside of it. Within that first quarter between the last red line here, which is the +4 line, and between this green line here, not always, but often, what you will see within the grafting trading strategy is that once you set the equilibrium zone on a pattern, the top end range will generally meet the bottom end range. Not every single time, but it happens a lot. So how we traded up here through this red zone, coming out, pushing up right here, it's very likely that we will see something very close to that in this range here. So by zooming into the DXY now, looking at the current price, you can see that zone would be right in here, right around this weak doji and this bullish BISI, which is on the monthly chart, which gives it quite a bit of teeth. Now overall, looking at the chart, you can see that the dollar has been coming down quite a bit from its peak here at about $1.10 to where we're currently trading at about 96.78. But when we look at these weak dojis right here on the chart, you can see that this top weak doji where price is trading just above now, which is going off of this weak doji reverse waterfall on the monthly chart. This is a very powerful doji, but it's not quite as powerful as it would be if it was centered 50-50. But at the same time, to where it's setting to the upside of this wick, it shows that it has the ability to cause reversals, because that's exactly what happened right here. Once price came up here, price pushed down, it pushed up, came to this point to where we saw this massive reversal, to where price just shot out of control from that weak doji. And it's very possible that that same thing could happen in this particular area again. So we could potentially see a reversal right here where price is currently trading. But if we go back to the weekly chart, the weak doji just below that one and up above this bullish BISI right here will tend to actually be a little bit more powerful than the one that we see up here on the monthly. Now the reason for that is this is split about 50-50, which means that the buyers and the sellers are about 50-50 in this area on the charts. It doesn't matter that it's going back quite a long period of time. And another thing that makes it even stronger is the fact that we see a correlation with other weak dojis piling up in the same area. This adds confluence to this doji. So coming back to this area on the charts, I think it's very likely that what we could end up seeing is, since XRP and the dollar are currently diverging from each other in the way that they're trading, with the dollar going down and XRP trading up, there's a good chance, depending on how this vote comes out, that we could see a decent move up in XRP moving into that liquidity zone that's marked out in the yellow on my chart, right here. Gathering up as much of this buy-side liquidity as we can, which essentially would be people taking short positions, selling into the market, expecting the price to come down, which could continue to take this candle even further. Let's say that the price gets a reversal right here off of this weak doji reverse waterfall, because that's what weak doji reverse waterfalls do. They can either act as a price target or they can act as a point of reversal. So if we get the reversal here and the dollar starts to move up especially now that we're starting to form a gap right here, which will likely be filled. Keep in mind this is the weekly chart and we're still early in the week. If price starts to trade up in the dollar and it starts to gain value, there's a good chance that we could actually see the exact opposite occur within the price of XRP since they're diverging. So we could essentially see the reversal right now. But if we do get a run in XRP because of the vote on the big beautiful shill, and this moves upwards into this liquidity zone, we could potentially see the price of the dollar continue to drop down further, moving towards this week doji reverse waterfall on the weekly, which I believe is going to be even stronger than this one, which means the price of XRP could continue to move up while the dollar moves down until we see the reversal in this area here off of this week doji, at which point we could see XRP reverse and come back down to the downside. So there's a couple potential ways that this could happen. Either we get the reversal with the dollar in the next day or two, and this could be the top that we've set right here already, as this has been absorbing buy-side liquidity all day since we saw that rally. If this wasn't the top coming up to this upper trend line and price does break out of here into this buy-side liquidity zone even farther, then we could see the price of the dollar come down as it's coming up, later seeing a reversal with the dollar moving up, which could be likely to pull XRP price down. And by looking how much the dollar has actually come down during this time, it's probably very likely that if we do see this move in the dollar coming back upwards at some point, that we could see it retest this upper trend line at right around 100, which would essentially be about a 3.5 point move. If it continues up and say tests off of this SIBI right here, we could essentially see the price of XRP falling down even lower, perhaps down to this lower trend line here. Now in my previous video, I've been predicting that we were going to see a draw on liquidity to the downside, perhaps a flash crash, absorbing the sell side liquidity that has yet to be absorbed before we see the move to the upside that we all know is coming. Now jumping over to my 4-hour XRP chart, I do have to say that previous video that I put out, that it's not guaranteed that we are going to come down to this order block here in that $1.50 range if price comes down. There is a possibility that it could come down here, but it's not guaranteed by any means. And it's a lot less likely on a percentage basis that it would come down here than perhaps up here at this orange line, which I think is probably twice as likely to occur compared to this, even though both are possible. It's also possible that price will continue to move up and never come down to this line here or this order block here. Now, when you look at this chart on the daily, you can see that a strong bullish divergence has formed between these 2 points here off of the stochastic below. Now price is trading up here towards the top of the range now, but if we did have a situation where the dollar started to gain value, pushing the price of XRP downward, I think the most likely target is going to be right back down here with the stochastic on this strong bullish divergence on the daily, pushing it down somewhere along this line, which means that the price would most likely come in somewhere at about that $1.78 to about a $1.85 range, somewhere in here within this bullish order block. If price broke through this, taking out this order block, then we very well could see a move even lower down here to this bullish order block. And as you can see, I've got my 2 limit buy orders marked out right here on the charts. 50% of my available capital is sitting right here at 148.3, 25% sitting right down here at 142.2, marked out on the charts. I'm simply laddering them because it's just a part of my strategy. And if neither of these orders get filled, I really don't care because my long position on my long-term holdings is already substantial enough, so I don't need any more XRP. If these got filled, it would just be gravy on top of gravy. But going back to the 4-hour chart, This would essentially be the first area that I would be looking at, would be right along this strong bullish divergence on the daily, right here in that particular area. That would be the first most likely place price would come down, which would also sweep the previous low right here. Because if you look at this low on the chart, you can see that this previous low right here, which is the pattern low in April, this actually swept all of the sell side liquidity for this entire pattern here. So this is all off the table. But what remains is everything between this low and this low. So if price comes down and sweeps this right here, it's taking all the remaining sell side liquidity off this part of the chart. If price breaks through here, comes down to this order block here, it sweeps all of the remaining sell side liquidity up here, all the way through here. So essentially, by coming down to this, then moving and going on our bull run that we all know is coming, essentially what would occur is all of the sell side liquidity for this entire pattern would be completely wiped off of the charts, going all the way back to the end of November, taking that liquidity up with it to the next range, wherever it may be. But I do think that it is very likely that we are going to see something like that. I think the odds of it favor clearing out the liquidity than it does just breaking out of this pattern and leaving it behind. I don't think the market makers and the institutions are going to go for that, honestly. It could end up being that price just tears out of here. But my honest opinion is I just don't believe that's going to happen. And if they're going to go through the trouble of pulling the price down here, whether it would be by manipulation, a black swan event, bad news from the Middle East again, who knows? This is going to strike fear into people like no other, because you saw 2 weekends ago when we had this down leg here, how much people were panicking when the price came down to about $1.90. Just imagine how much people would panic if we took this low out and continued downward from there and started hitting the 170s, 165, 150. People would panic, only to sell in a panic here and then watch the price come down to this order block, reverse in the blink of an eye, and go on the run that they had been waiting for the entire time. If I was a market maker or I was working for BlackRock as a floor trader, that is exactly what I would do to retail. I would scare them to the point that they never wanted to buy XRP ever again. And then I would ride this right up to the land of milk and honey. So that's kind of what I've been thinking looking at these charts. Think about the dollar compared to XRP. Keep an eye on the two, because if we see a reversal in the dollar, you want to see how the price of XRP is reacting to it as they are diverging right now. There may even be a point where they diverge for a bit, then come into alignment with each other, and even if the dollar is moving up, we might see XRP line up with it, and then the two start moving in the same direction upwards. Because there's a very good chance if this big, beautiful shill gets passed, that it might actually be pretty good for the dollar. So that'll be something to watch. So thank you for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it, and good luck to all of you. Have a great day.